Hello, everyone. Nathaniel Gavronsky here, and I am at Fort Necessity. This is George Washington's only field of battle in which he ever surrendered. So, a quick run up to what Fort Necessity is and why it matters. So, this is in the middle of the Ohio country. This is where the French and the British were trying to fight over for dominance. See, the French colonies in this area, New France and Louisiana, were sparsely populated. The British outnumbered them like 20 to 1 as far as colonists as settlers in North America. All of this area, as far as the French were concerned, was basically the west of Appalachian Mountains, east of the Mississippi River, and south of Canada. So all the way from the Canadian border down to the Gulf of America. So this, give a quick rundown. This tree line behind me, this is the French and Indian position. You get over here, this little fort, that's the British position. This is Fort Necessity, the reconstruction of Fort Necessity. Okay, so leading up to this, okay, so the British and Virginia wanted to claim this area for the Crown of England, and that again they needed the trading rights. They needed to be able to trap here. This was able to earn a day's pay for the British, so they needed to be able to expand westward over the Appalachian Mountains. The French needed to concentrate their forces to populate the area, to lay decisive claim over the Ohio country, so that they could keep their trading lines open with the Native Americans. Now, the Native Americans, they had, some picked the French, some picked the British. It was kind of a fluid situation with Native allies in this time period. This is a really important area because, like, the whole world changes from this spot. So, the British governor in Virginia, Dinwiddie, sends Washington a little while earlier, and to the French, and say, by the way, French, we're glad you're visiting Virginia, but you need to leave. This is British territory, Virginia territory. I need you to pack up your things and leave. The French looked at the summons that Washington brought them and said, I am not in command. You should have sent this to my superiors in Canada. So Washington was dismissed and sent back to Williamsburg. Dinwiddie said, well, we're going to show them, sends Washington back out. Sends Washington back out with other Native American allies to explain to the French in very clear English that no, this is Britain, it's British territory, and that you will be leaving. Well, Native allies of Washington's little detachment, they find on May 28th, 1754, a small detachment of English troops at a place called Jumerville Glen. We call it Jumerville Glen because one of the most important people in North America, as far as the French are concerned, is a guy named, he's an ensign, and his name is Jumonville. Now, Jumonville is, from what the French claim, the ambassador. He's a French diplomat here to hand a summons over to the British, explain to them that this is French territory and that the British need to evacuate. Washington's Native American allies during the battle scalp Jumonville. They crush his skull. Now, what happens at the actual killing of Jumonville is not entirely known. We believe that one of the half-breed kings, the half-breed king, the half-blood, something happened. I've seen a couple different names of what they called this guy, but he was either the half-king, half-blood king, half-breed king, which actually makes no sense. But he was a native chief who hated the French and apparently washed his hands in the brains of Jumonville. The biggest problem with this, not necessarily that the guy was the French ambassador, but that his brother was the commander of the largest fort in the area, Fort Duquesne. Now, Fort Duquesne was in the location that Washington was originally sent to fortify the forks of the Ohio River. This is now the city of Pittsburgh. So they were literally, both the British and the French empires are fighting over the city of Pittsburgh. It's not Pittsburgh yet, but it's getting there. Can you imagine the whole world is changed over the city of Pittsburgh? Anyway, the French find out about the slaughter of the ambassador's guardsmen and the ambassador himself, and Washington knows that the French are coming. So Washington is heading back towards a fortified area. He's been building roads. He wants to widen the road so that the British full, regular army could march up through here along with all their cannons and all their supply trains with ease. So he's building this road. The French take that road that Washington built, and it leads them right to where the British are holding up. This is Fort Necessity. Now, Washington gets here in early June, and he realizes that the French are coming. And so he is building this Fort Necessity, because he knows that the French are coming, so he's trying to fortify it. And so he builds this. This is a reconstruction, but the earthworks here, this you can kind of see this is basically what he's trying to build. And he gets reinforcements from a few other places, but the French have this line back here, this wooded tree line. That's where they are coming into him at, and they arrive. And early July, July 1st, July 2nd, and July 3rd is when this actual battle takes place. It starts off small. The French show up. They find out where he's at. They, popping shots off at each other. The British set up in full field formation once you get kind of outside of the forted area, and they're anticipating a full frontal assault from the French. The French are like, we have trees to hide behind. Why are we going to stand out in an open field? And so they stay behind the wooded tree line. The British built these earthworks, and it's raining so hard that they flood out. They're basically little shallow ponds. All of their ammunition becomes wet. They're unable to fire their muskets, while the French troops are considerably in better position. Yeah, they're getting wet. Some of their ammunition is running low. The French commander Villers, he realizes that he can't keep this sustained fight up either. There's about 400 or so people in the British camp. Somewhere around 1,000, a little under 1,000 in the French and Indian camp. And he realized that the British are in a bad position. He wants to, from a position of power, try to get the British to surrender so he can, avenge his brother. The French commander can get the avenge of his brother Jumonville. And so on the battle on July 3rd starts at 11 a.m. By the end of the day, most of the British are drunk, dead, wounded, are unable to fight because of the ammunition problem. So about 8 o'clock, the French call out for negotiations. Washington doesn't speak French. The French don't speak anything but French. And so Washington has a couple people in his camp who aren't native English speakers nor native French speakers, but speak Dutch, which is non-French or English language, to go and try to negotiate, understand the terms of what the French want. So Washington sends over his people to the French camp, and they lay out a document. Now these terms on their face of it sound fantastic. The British are being offered to be able to leave the fort with their colors, with their arms, with their wounded, and this go back to Virginia. They don't have to leave anything behind. They're able to take all of it with them, and so they plan on doing that. They are preparing to leave. Washington thinks these terms are great. Of course, Washington, again, doesn't speak French. He has no idea that the French have actually proclaimed in the surrender documents that Washington admits that he is responsible for the assassination of the French ambassador. Now, when Washington gets back to Williamsburg, he is initially seen as a hero. He got his men out. He fought valiantly. And the problem is that in Europe, the French get a lot of sympathy about the assassination of the ambassador. And this battle that took place here, this is the first full engagement of the French-Indian War. This becomes a basic world war. The 7 Years' War, as is known in Europe, encompasses colonies, most European powers, all of them are which trying to wedge out some influence away from the French or the British or both. And all of modern Europe is laid on a track to what it will become from this conflict. So I want you to think about it this way. the French-Indian War, which starts here, I mean, the Jumonville affair is what sparks this battle. But this battle is the first full, like, British lines, French lines are lined up in North America, preparing to fight and shoot at each other on North American land. Because of the consequences of this war, the French lose. The French are embarrassed. They lose control over Canada. They keep control over Louisiana, but again, there's very few settlers here. The French end up spawning it up, selling it off to the Spanish. It kind of goes back and forth between the Spanish and French for a while, but the French lose almost all influence in North America, and the British, who spent a lot of money defending the colonists in the French-Indian War, need to recuperate their losses, so they start levying taxes on the colonists. Now we all know where this goes. The taxes lead to the Revolutionary War. And the rise of George Washington as the first president of the current government of the United States. A couple other things that happened, though. Because of the French involvement in the Revolutionary War, the French are now broke, and the king loses his head over mismanagement of the French coffers. So you have the rise of Napoleon and the Enlightenment period, okay, without, the French Revolution, that doesn't take place. The Holy Roman Empire never falls. With the Holy Roman Empire never falling, you never have the unification of Germany. Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto have no environment for which Marx could write them. So the rise of communism in Europe never takes a hold. The Imperial Russian Empire stays pretty strong. The Soviet Union never rises. You never have the assassination of the Tsar, Alexander or Nicholas II. You see a completely different Europe. There's no World War I. There's no World War II. There's a very different place. North America clearly, obviously, was going to look different, but this is a very different world that we live in at this point. And I don't think people really give much credit to the consequences of Washington's actions, because he was unable to maintain command of his subordinates with his Indian allies, and the assassination, quote unquote, of Jumonville and the subsequent Battle of Fort Necessity, sparking off an official conflict with French. I mean, that the surrender, the papers that Washington signed saying he admits that he's responsible for the assassination of Jumonville. That's what gives the French ability to wage, a greater warfare on the area. This is absolutely instrumental in understanding the development of world affairs. And like I said, the reason why I do a lot of these videos is kind of want to show you, like, how did we get to where we are? How did this all come about? And the Jumonville affair and the Battle of Fort Necessity is one of those, stepping stones into the greater world that we live in. And like I said, I'm going to take you kind of inside the fort here. It was rainy. It's kind of what the weather is like today. Kind of cold and damp. Thankfully, it's not torrential downpour. Again, this whole thing would have been flooded during the war, during the actual battle. But this is important. What happened here has had a huge impact on every human being that's lived in this world since. The rise and fall of European powers, the creation of the United States, all of that has a huge impact on the globe and on everyone on the planet. And if it wasn't for this, little skirmish here in southwest Pennsylvania over the city of Pittsburgh, who knows what the world would look like. If you come out to the fort, they do have some original pieces at the visitor center. Again, this is all a reconstruction piece, but the fort, they do have original pieces of the fort at the visitor center. The area is quite peaceful. You would never thought that, in 1754, in July 1754, this whole place was this tore up. Like, people, this place was full of dead bodies. It's the violence that took place here, and you come out here today, you don't want to have a picnic. Uh, I think that's an interesting perspective that we don't see. We see, just subtle traces of human activity here without realizing the loss of life, the feeling of fear and hopelessness by the British that are laying in pools of water and blood because of the torrential downpour, and then the French are trying to avenge the death of their ambassador. Also, the French are their ammunition is starting to get wet. They don't have a lot of it, so they had to negotiate from a place of power before they lost that advantage. Um, Washington learned. They say the best teacher are your mistakes, and Washington learned from this mistake. Washington was fundamentally changed with his outlook from this environment, from this encounter at Fort Necessity. Without Fort Necessity, say the Revolutionary War still somehow happens, Washington is not the commander that he is. He doesn't have the experience that he has. Washington's complete outlook on how to command and to handle situations is formed from this experience. So that's how important the places like this really are. And I just want to share it with you so you can kind of see how they would have seen it, how they would have felt it the best that I can. It's very important. When I first read about Fort Necessity, I thought there's no way they know what this place was. It was built in a hurry. I doubt they took very good records and notes of where it was. The roads are probably all gone. It's been redeveloped. Who knows? It's right here. We know exactly where it was. This When I first got here, I was like so surprised that they actually know where Fort Necessity was. I remember reading about it, like, oh, there's no way I'll ever be able to visit that spot. They have no idea where it is, and here I am today. Um, the Jumerville Glen, it's there. You can go stand on top of the cliffs that the Native Americans stood on when they were watching the French, eat their breakfast and get ready for the morning. You can walk the trails that Washington used leading up to the battlefield at Jumerville Glen. You can come out here. You can feel it. You can smell it. You can touch the soil. This is the place where they were at. There's a little bit of there's some changes, but this is it. This is the core of the location, and you can experience it the way that they did to the best of our ability to recreate it. So I want to say thank you to everyone who came out here with these videos with me. Watch these. I want you to please like, subscribe, and share them. The more you do that, the more notoriety I get on YouTube and on Facebook and all the social medias. It does help me out tremendously if you guys do that. So please like, share, and subscribe. If you have any questions or have places that you guys want to check out, let me know. I'll get to them when I can. But this is really important stuff. People need to be aware of how the world has changed or changed for the better or for the worse over something at the time was a small, engagement. I bet you Washington probably did a little bit more studying in French after this. He never did speak it, but I'm sure he probably looked into it a little bit more. Um, but this is an interesting part of history, and I'm glad you all are enjoy watching these videos and follow along. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, and as always, stay wise, America.